Now to Washington and the latest on the investigation into classified marked documents connected to President Biden that have now been found in 2 different locations. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed a special counsel to review the classified material found in Biden's Delaware home and a Washington office he used after leaving the Obama White House. The first batch of documents were found last November before the midterm election, but the discovery wasn't made public until this week. Those documents are under review by the Justice Department. Garland discussed the appointment yesterday with reporters.
I signed an order appointing Robert Hur as special counsel for the matter I've just described. The document authorizes him to investigate whether any person or entity violated the law in connection with this matter.
And for the latest, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley and White House correspondent Carol Lee. Good morning to you both. Carol, let's start with you. The president spoke about the documents yesterday, fielded a lot of questions from reporters. What do we know about them, and what did he say?
Well, what we know so far is actually very little. We know where they were found. We know there were 3 different occasions in which the president's legal team discovered these documents. The White House counsel's office says that there's a small number of documents that were found at the president's home in Wilmington, Delaware. We know from our own reporting that the documents that were found on November 2nd at the president's office that he had after he left the vice presidency, that there were fewer than a dozen documents there. And now we're learning that one of the documents at that office that was found is labeled TSSCI. So that's a very high classification. The others, we're told, were not as high of a classification. As for what the president has said about this, when he was asked about this yesterday, he continued to say that his White House and his team will fully cooperate. Take a listen.
They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document.
Now, the president continues to say that he takes classified information very seriously. At the same time, we've seen him sort of downplay this. He said, you know, yes, these documents were locked in a garage next to his Corvette at his home in Wilmington, but it's not like they were out there in the street. And as for the president's legal team, we've heard from the White House counsel's office after that special counsel was named by the Justice Department that this is something that these documents wound up in these boxes that the president took after he left the Obama administration by mistake.
And Julia, the other big headline yesterday was the appointment of this new special counsel, Robert Hur, a former U.S. attorney for Maryland. So what more do we know about him and his selection?
That's right. Robert Hur was the U.S. attorney in Maryland under the Trump administration. He was a Trump pick. He served from 2018 until February 2021, just as President Biden was coming into office. I think that's important context here because Merrick Garland and the appointment of a special counsel wants to show he's not picking one of his own here. Robert Hur has a long reputation. He also served as number 2 to Rod Rosenstein when he was deputy attorney general, when he was overseeing special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, because then Attorney General Jeff Sessions had recused himself. And this appointment is really for Garland to show independence here. He also says it's because the U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Illinois, John Lausch, is now moving on to the private sector. He had previously been overseeing the preliminary investigation into these documents. But in an effort to show the independence of this investigation as well as the independence of the investigation into Trump's handling of classified documents, he thinks a special counsel appointment is necessary. Here's the reasons he gave yesterday. Take a listen.
This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law.
So you can see there is a lot of questions about, is the appointment of a special counsel necessarily meaning that this investigation has gone up and is more serious? There's so much we don't know about these documents or what might be in them. But the Attorney General is clearly saying the reason for this is independence. We're not learning a whole lot about what U.S. Attorney Lausch might have told Merrick Garland that prompted the appointment of Robert Hur.
And Carol, obviously the spotlight is on these documents. A special counsel investigation will will no doubt be a distraction for the White House. How is the administration preparing to handle this while still trying to move forward with the president's agenda?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a huge distraction for this White House. This is a president that's, by all accounts, getting ready to announce that he's running for re-election and to launch a 2024 campaign. And this is a huge political headache for them. Also, notable that there are aides to the president who worked for him as vice president in those closing weeks of his vice presidency who are likely to be interviewed as part of this investigation. We know from our own reporting, Mike Memoli, that there have already been Biden aides who were interviewed in this preliminary review that was done of these documents, including an executive assistant to the president who was when he was vice president, who works at the Pentagon. There are a number of officials in the White House who also worked for him as vice president. And so this is something that's going to be a big distraction. We now also have this situation where you have the president's only declared opponent, former President Donald Trump, who has a special counsel looking into his handling of classified information. And now you have the president who has his own special counsel looking into classified information. And that is a narrative that's really going to be a struggle for the White House to get around.
All right. I'm sure we'll be following this in the days and weeks to come. Carol and Julia, thanks so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.